Hey guys, today's video is going to be my 2023 wrap-up slash favorite books of 2023. So this year I read about 84 books, maybe a little bit more now because I've done a little bit of extra reading in December. But I've read about 84 books, and out of all of them, I have about 14 that were new reads for this year and made top list of this year's books. So I would love to go over those books with you and recommend all of my favorite reads from 2023. Okay, so the first book was The Push by Ashley Adrian, I just believe is how you say her name. This was not my first read of the year, but just my first like 5-star read of 2023. This was a book club pick with my book club, and it was a hit amongst everybody. We were talking about this book for a long time after we all read it. I actually believe that it still holds our highest rated amongst our book club. It was something like I've never read before. This is a book about a mom who she's like a new mother. She was so excited to have her first baby, and once she has the baby, she is struggling with like postpartum depression / not really connecting with her daughter at all. She thought that this baby was gonna like bring her closer to her husband, and it actually like kind of pulls them further apart. It goes through the ups and downs of marriage, the ups and downs of parenthood, plus it's like fiction, so it's got like these twists and turns that you just would not expect. I mean, this was like a great start to the year of 2023. This was just, I couldn't recommend this more. It's quick, it's short. I mean, I think I read through it in like just a few sessions of reading. I didn't want to put it down. So highly recommend The Push. She did just release another book earlier this year called The Whispers, I believe. I have not read that one yet, but I am dying to know if that one's as good or as highly rated as The Push was. For my second highly rated book of 2023, it is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. So I have read a lot of Colleen Hoover over the years. I have some here, and I've borrowed some from the library, read some on my Kindle. And to be honest, I have some of her books that I really like and enjoy, and some that I didn't really love and connect with. So I didn't really know what to expect from this one, and I ended up loving this book. I read this one in just a few sessions of reading. It was one that I did not want to put down. This book is about a girl that just gets released from prison, and she desperately wants to reconnect with her young daughter, who's like 4 or 5 years old, and living with people who do not want her to be in contact with her daughter. Throughout the whole book, you slowly get pieces and pieces of what happened that put her in jail, and on top of that, why the family who has her daughter does not want her to see her daughter. It is heartbreaking and heartwarming all at the same time. It was so good. I loved the characters, loved the main character, loved her background. I mean, I was really connected to the characters in this one. I just thought that Colleen did a really, really great job with this book. Okay, so my third book of 2023 was one that I don't have the physical copy of. My husband bought me a Kindle this year, so it is the first year that I have a lot of books that I've read on my Kindle, and I don't have the physicals. So the first one was Beartown. I'm going to pop a picture up over here. It's by Frederick Bachman. And this was another general fiction read that I didn't expect to love as much as I did. It's simply a book about a hockey town that is trying very hard to get to like their finals or regionals. And something really terrible happens in the town and puts one of the biggest hockey players in the town in like the spotlight and in a bad way. And so it's between like, do we trust this person who's calling them out, or do we trust this hockey player because we really don't want this to tear the team down? The book was also really devastating, but really, really great. I thought the writing was phenomenal and the storytelling was amazing. It was a story I would have never thought to pick up on my own without being recommended it. But I'm so glad that it was recommended to me because I absolutely loved it and it became one of my top reads of this year. Okay, book number 4. I do have the physical copy to this one. It is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. Nolan? Sorry, I'm going to be really terrible about pronouncing some of these names. I think it's Laura Nolan, and that is how I'm going to guess that you say that. If He Had Been With Me. This one is a young adult, basically general fiction, contemporary fiction, whatever you want to say. This was another one that I was very unsure of when picking it up. This was a TikTok rated, like highly rated book of the year. And the reason I ended up picking it up was because so many people had said that this was like, this book just like broke them. It was so devastating. And I love when books make me feel that way. I love when books, like when I feel so deeply for the characters that it actually makes me emotional. But I haven't read YA in quite a bit. This would be one of my first books getting back into the young adult genre after kind of coming out of it and into adult. So it's a little hard for me because I tend to compare young adult to adult, and I feel like it's not really fair to compare the two genres. But this book ended up being one of my highest rated books this year. It's so captivating. It was so good. It's honestly very devastating. So in the back just says, if he had been with me, everything would be different. And I loved it. I really, really loved this book. It's just like from the very beginning, it kind of tells you like what's going to happen, but it doesn't like hit you as hard until you get to the very end of the book. And then you're just like, you can't even believe what happened. You don't want to believe what happened. It's very good. I don't want to like overhype any of the books that I read this year, but from what I was expecting out of it, it exceeded my expectations, and this was just one of those books that I will continue to recommend from now on. Okay, so book number 5 is another one that I do not have the physical copy to. This was one that I borrowed from the library, but it is Just the Nicest Couple by Mary Kubica. Again, I'll throw up a picture of it over here. This book was one that nobody recommended it to me. I just happened to see it at the library and really wanted to read it. Based on the back of the book. And so I had no expectations whatsoever going into that one and ended up loving it. I probably rated it 4.5 or 4.75 because it's probably one of my favorite thrillers I've ever read. It is told from it's got 4 different viewpoints and it's 2 different couples. So it's like a husband and a wife and a husband and wife. And you hear all 4 of their different point of views, and they're like, nobody knows who to trust, and nobody knows what actually happened. You don't know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, really, all the way till the very end. I mean, I feel like maybe I'm just really bad at guessing the surprise at the end of a book, but this one I really didn't see it coming until I got to the end, and I kind of guessed it right before they kind of told you what was going on. But still very highly rated. I really did like this one, and I ended up continuing to recommend it to multiple people after I finished it. Okay, the next book is another thriller. This one I also did not get recommended. I just picked this one up based on the back of the book, and that is 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. This was a very interesting one because this was the first book I've ever picked up and read that is based on the COVID pandemic. Very interesting topic for me. I honestly didn't know if I would love or hate reading about the pandemic that we just went through. And it wasn't fun to live it, so I didn't know if it would be fun to read about it. But honestly, as you know, because this is my top reads of the year, I actually did really like this one. I am a fan of thrillers, and I do often try really hard not to guess the end because I love the shock factor of figuring it out and not guessing it. But I really liked this one. This is about a couple that meets right before the pandemic hits, and they kind of like start talking, start dating, and they really start to like each other, but the pandemic hits and the quarantine hits in Ireland, and they're not allowed to see anybody or really leave their homes. And so they decide really abruptly to move in together, and that they're going to go through the beginning of the pandemic together until one of them ends up dead. And then it goes from the like investigator's point of view while they try to solve the murder of what happened to this couple. I really, really enjoyed this read. I felt like it went really fast, although it is a little bit longer than some of the other books, like some of the other mystery or thriller books that I read. But I feel like I still flew through it just as fast as any other one. And I really, really enjoyed all the different point of views. It is from, the two main characters and an investigator and one of the neighbors. And this book just, there's twists and turns. There's mysteries that you won't particularly guess. Maybe you will. I didn't guess them. But yeah, definitely recommend 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard. Had to take a break and grab my water. Okay, so my next book on the list was The Institute by Stephen King. Again, I'll pop up a picture over here. This one was one that was recommended by a friend because she had never read any Stephen King books, and knowing that I was a reader, she asked me if I had, and I had never read any Stephen King. So she was like, you really should read this book. And so I picked it up. I borrowed this one again from the library, but I ended up really, really liking this book, and it led me to continue on and read another Stephen King novel this year. This book is about it's told from two different point of views. The first one is like a 40-year-old police officer that has just moved to a new town, and he picked up this new job working a random night shift, like security guard like position. And the other point of view is a young boy who is just taken from his family and taken to the institute, where they are trying to find these magical powers in young kids. The two point of views, you don't really understand how they're gonna connect until they do. But I really, really loved the way that Stephen King took two completely different characters and storylines and made them into one cohesive story. I felt like it was really great writing, and I loved the characters, and honestly, I was hooked, even though you're a little confused in the beginning. Sometimes that can just throw you off and make you want to stop reading. But I feel like it had me hooked, and I continued to read, and I finished the book. And I really, really loved it. It became one of my top rated books. And because of that, I ended up picking up The Outsider, also by Stephen King, because that one was also highly rated, and I just really wanted another Stephen King-like book, and loved that one as well. So yeah, The Institute I highly, highly recommend for if you have or haven't ever read Stephen King books. It's a great one. So also, I feel like there's this idea that all Stephen King books are like really scary, and some people who don't love horror like don't want to pick up a Stephen King book. This one was not horror to me at all. It was more like a sci-fi thriller, if anything. Like I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm not even a huge sci-fi reader. So if that tells you anything, then I hope you pick up that book, because it was really great. Again, the next book is one that I do not have the physical copy of. This is The Last Word. I cannot remember who the author was. Give me 1 second and I will figure that out. Okay, so The Last Word is written by Taylor Adams. This book was another one of my book club's picks. Clearly we had a really good year of picks this year in our book club, because a lot of them made it to my top 20 reads of the year, which is very impressive. But the last word is this book about a girl that, because of something traumatic that happens to her in her past, she goes away for the summer and lives in this old, it's not like abandoned, but it's this like faraway house, very few neighbors, very desolate. And she goes away to kind of get away from people. So the only person around her is this neighbor next door that they communicate through telescopes and notes in each other's windows. He recommends her this book that she reads and rates like a very low 1-star rating on Amazon. And the author like messages her and asks her to take down the review. And because she doesn't take down the review, very like strange things start to happen around the house, and she's wondering if she's being stalked by the author himself. So this book was very, very interesting. I couldn't tell in the beginning if I loved it or if I hated it. So it was weird. It was very different than anything I've ever read, and I didn't know where the story was going, to be honest. But personally, I really liked the ending of it. I felt like the ending had so many twists and turns that it really did keep me guessing. I could only guess so many of the twists before they had me, and I didn't know where the book was going from there. And I liked that about it. Some people did not love that about this book, but I felt like it was a really cool aspect to reading this thriller that I liked. So I definitely do recommend to read that one, but some people don't like the extra twists and turns that were at the end. So if you're like that, then maybe this book isn't for you, but I did really enjoy this one. The next book on my list was a recent read of 2023 that I did not expect to make it to this list. I got this book from Book of the Month in 2022 because it was rated it was their top rated book of the month pick. And that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriella Zevin. I think it's Zevin. I don't know. Gabriella Zevin. Sorry. This book is about like video game designers. And honestly, because of that, I did not think that I would like it. I'm not a huge video game person. And so I was like, I don't know if I'll have any interest in a book that's about video game designers, but I loved it. I really, really loved this book. Like, this was probably a 4.75 read for me. Sorry to all the people that are like solid numbered raters. I go all over the spectrum, and this was a 4.75. This was so good. I loved the characters. I loved the character development. It was honestly more like just a general fiction than that had like that was just an aspect of it, that they were video game designers, but it was really more about their life than it was particularly about the games that they made. I loved it. I mean, I was very captured, and I loved the characters in this book. I loved the main character himself, has gone through something really traumatic in the past, of course, as they all have. And it leads to why he is the way that he is now. And I don't know how many times I can say it. I really loved this book. It caught me off guard. I didn't expect the ending that happened. It's very, very sad in the end. And so it kind of pulled on my heartstrings a little bit, and I did not expect. I honestly thought that it would just be this fun, like, I thought it would be more like Ready Player One than anything, and it wasn't. So if that's what you're expecting out of this book, it's not like that at all. It's not very like sci-fi at all. It's more just general fiction, and I really, really highly recommend picking up this book by Gabriella Zevin. She also wrote another book that was very popular. It's called The Storied Life of A.J. Vickery. I have not read that book yet, but I've heard a lot of people talk very highly of that one. So that's probably a book that's going to be on my TBR for 2024, since I read this at the very end of 2023 and rated it so highly. Okay, I've totally lost count by now, but my next book is another one that I read at the end of 2023. This was my October book of the month pick, and that is The Unmaking of June Pharaoh by Adrienne Young. This book was, I kind of expected it to be a highly rated book, but I didn't know how much I would love it. This one is probably top 5 of this year's reads. This book was it was very captivating for how short it was. It's not very long at all, but honestly, it was so good, and it had me from the very beginning of the book till the very end. This is about a woman whose family members, they have this like history. Every woman in her family has a history of like mental illness, in specifically like a dementia type mental illness. And so basically in the beginning of the book, her grandmother passes away, and she never really knew her mom. And so she's kind of waiting for this illness to take her. And as she's learning more about this illness, she learns that it's not particularly an illness that is taking the women in her family, but it's very magical and very fun, and it's kind of like a time travel type romance. I really loved this one and didn't really expect it to be as high as it was on my list this year. But it definitely is, and I recommend this to honestly anyone who loves general fiction. You can love fantasy, you can love really almost anything, and I would still tell you that you should read this book, because it was just so good. Okay, so I've saved my last 3 books for last for a reason, because the last 2 of them go together as a series, and they are honestly one of the highest rated books of 2023 in general. And that is Fourth Wing and Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. These are on most people's top rated books of 2023. And honestly, I hate to be so cliche, but they're rated so highly for a reason. I think honestly, these books were so good. And so, I would be shocked if any of you have not heard of these books yet and have not picked them up. But if you haven't, go run out and grab Fourth Wing and just give this book a read, because this is so good. This is adult fantasy. It is about, follows our main character, Violet Sorrengail, who wants to be in the scribes quadrant, which is like the intellectual quadrant, and the writers, the historians, basically. She's very smart, and she's not very gifted like her family in the way that her mom and her brother and her sister were all writers, but her dad was a scribe. And her mother forces her to go into the writer quadrant, which is very dangerous, and you have to be very highly skilled to make it through the writer quadrant, which the writers are like the defenders of their nation, and they obviously clearly ride dragons. I'm not going to say much more than that, because much more than that would be kind of a spoiler. And so I hope that you take that. And if you have not already, please go pick up this book. And you might as well pick up the second one while you're at it, because you're going to want it immediately the second the first book ends, because they both end in cliffhangers, which is partially why everybody's freaking out so much about them on the internet, because who doesn't freak out when they get to an end of a cliffhanger and they don't immediately have the second book? So I paired these two together in my read, although I read this one in the very beginning of the year when it was released and then had to wait for this one to come out. And now I read this one as soon as it was released, and now we have to wait for book 3. So yes, so Iron Flame, Fourth Wing, 5-star reads for me. These two were both really, really great. Highly recommend to anybody. Also, side note, sorry, I forgot to say this in the last part. Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, I will say they do have some spice in the first book and quite a bit in the second book. So just for the people who are reading this, just as like a little warning for whoever that might, I don't know, some people might love that and some people might hate it. So take that as you will, but they do have spice in these books. Okay, so my last book. These were not particularly rated in order of greatest or of least to best, but they're pretty close. This book was another one that I kind of just added on at the end of the year because I got it at the end of the year and read it and didn't expect to really love it as much as I did. That is Powerless. This is by Lauren Roberts. Lauren Roberts is a TikToker, a book talker that I've been following since pretty much the beginning of the pandemic, and she honestly brought her followers through the making of this book, which was so cool because I remember literally the first couple videos that she made, she had this like hanging white chair from her room and she would sit down in it and she's like, okay, I got a book idea. It is going to be, you know, main character, enemies to lovers. And she brought us through the whole making of this book. And so getting it in my hands and reading it was like, this is so cool because I've never followed an author from beginning to start when it comes to writing a book. And with this one, I feel like we got to. And so that honestly added to the experience of reading this book. But it's great whether you, sorry, there's a bookmark still in it, but whether you were part of that or not, I honestly still highly recommend this book. Lauren Roberts did a really phenomenal job for her debut novel. Sorry, guys. Lauren Roberts did a really great job for her debut novel, and I cannot wait for book 2. So definitely highly recommend this this fantasy book. Okay, so for the end of this video, I am going to say that these were not in order, but these were my top 5 books of this year. We have Powerless, Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, The Unmaking of June Pharaoh, and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriella Zevin. These books honestly were so phenomenal, and I would recommend them to honestly anyone. I've recommended these to most people I know that read have been recommended any of these books by me. So please check out these books and let me know if you liked this video, and I hope to see you at the next video. Really quick little side note, I did go out to Barnes & Noble and buy the special edition of Fourth Wing, by the way. How absolutely stunning is this book? Like, come on. I couldn't even help myself. So now I not only have the original covers of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, but how great do these look? And this. Come on. Like, I couldn't even help myself. Couldn't even do it. They're just so good. Okay, anyways, bye.